Hello, everyone. Robyn Lynn here again, back with another episode of The World According to Robyn. Today, we're diving into narcissism. What is it? How does it show up in relationships? And most importantly, how does it impact trans women, especially those of us navigating ADHD and RSD? That is a chaotic cocktail of emotions. Oh, but trolls, if you're here to spread your hate, save yourself the trouble. You'll get blocked faster than I can say gaslighting sucks. With that out of the way, let's get into it. So, what is narcissism? According to the American Psychological Association, narcissism is a personality variable characterized by an inflated self-image, a sense of entitlement, and a need for admiration. Narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD for short, however, takes it a little bit further. When those traits are so extreme, they disrupt a person's life and relationships. The good news is, NPD is fairly uncommon. It's narcissism on steroids. Most narcissists are, well, just plain narcissistic. You probably know the type. They're charming at first, maybe even magnetic, but over time, the world revolves entirely around themselves, and you're just along for the ride. Sound familiar? If you've dated one, you're nodding right now. And if you see some of these traits in yourself, well, maybe stick around for some self-reflection. Here's the thing. As trans women, we're often conditioned to seek validation externally. Society has spent years telling us we're wrong or too much. So we learn to crave approval, sometimes desperately. Narcissists, they see that vulnerability as an open door. And let's not forget the emotional labor. Trans women are often expected to educate, explain, and comfort others about our identities, our experiences, even their feelings about us. Suddenly announcing that we're trans is met with an expectation that you're the Google of trans, forcing us to formulate a defense of who we are before we even open our mouths. Narcissists thrive in this dynamic because it lets them take without giving. They will feed validation back to you by the spoonful to gain your trust. Then they gaslight, they love bomb, and they leave you questioning your worth. For me, it felt like walking on eggshells. No matter what I did, it was never enough. No matter what trigger I tried to avoid or boundary I tried not to cross, there was always another barrier created and thrown up in my face. I couldn't win this stacked game. Now, let's add ADHD and rejection-sensitive dysphoria, otherwise known as RSD, into the mix. ADHD brains are wired for intensity, hyper-focus, emotional highs and lows, and a constant struggle with impulse control. RSD? That's the part of ADHD that makes rejection feel like the end of the world. It creates physical pain, which reinforces the emotional suffering, which triggers the RSD, which reinforces the pain. Wash, rinse, repeat. So what happens when you put an RSD-prone brain in a relationship with a narcissist? It's a perfect storm. Narcissists love to withhold approval and dangle it just out of reach. And those of us with RSD will chase it because rejection isn't just painful, it's soul-crushing. We internalize their criticism, bend over backward to win them over, and lose ourselves in the process. It's exhausting. Now, let's talk about the hormonal layer. Estrogen adds an entire new complication to this. Something unique to trans women on HRT. Estrogen doesn't just feminize the body, it also changes the brain. I've talked about this in my earlier episodes. Research suggests that estrogen amplifies emotional sensitivity and strengthens neural connections involved in empathy, attachment, and mood regulation. For trans women with ADHD, this means we may feel emotions even more intensely post-transition. That's beautiful when it comes to experiencing joy and connection, but it can also make RSD hit harder. A side eye from a stranger, suddenly it's a personal attack. A narcissist silent treatment, it feels like abandonment on steroids. Estrogen heightens our capacity for love and empathy, but it also deepens our vulnerability to emotional pain. This makes navigating relationships with narcissists even trickier. So, you may ask yourself, as a trans person, am I a narcissist? When exploring narcissism within the context of trans women's experiences, it's essential to distinguish between actual narcissistic tendencies and behaviors shaped by external pressures and trauma. Why do some trans women worry about being narcissistic? Trans women may question if they're narcissistic because societal bias often portrays their focus on self-discovery and transition as self-centered. This is especially unfair given the intense scrutiny and judgment trans people face. Self-advocacy and self-care, essential for survival and well-being, can be misconstrued as egotistical in a society conditioned to view trans identities with skepticism. Vulnerable narcissism is a quieter form of narcissism characterized by feelings of shame, distrust, and intense need for validation. These traits can overlap with responses to trauma, particularly for trans individuals who've endured rejection, isolation, or abuse. The experience of being marginalized might lead to behaviors that appear narcissistic but are in reality mechanisms for coping with systematic rejection. Many trans women struggle with internalized need for external validation due to societal and familial pressures. This need doesn't necessarily equate to narcissism, but reflects the survival strategies trans individuals develop in environments that often invalidate their identities. So here are some growth-oriented questions you can ask yourself. If you're concerned about narcissistic traits, it might help to ask, am I pursuing validation or recognition in ways that could harm my relationships? Do I feel shame or anxiety when my needs are visible to others? Or am I using self-confidence as a shield to protect against past rejections? By reflecting on these aspects, trans women can distinguish between self-advocacy and behaviors that may need adjustment to foster healthier relationships and personal growth. Self-awareness is a cornerstone for breaking cycles of vulnerability and trauma while remaining authentically you. If you're navigating these questions, consider consulting therapists who specialize in LGBTQ plus and neurodivergent experiences. This can help unpack and address concerns with compassion and accuracy. So, how do we break free? Free of narcissism, that is. Here are a few survival strategies. Number one, recognize the patterns. Narcissists gaslight and manipulate to keep you doubting yourself. Learn the signs: constant criticism, love bombing, and their endless need to be at the center of attention. Number two, set boundaries and stick to them. ADHD brains struggle with boundaries, especially when we're emotionally invested. But trust me, this is non-negotiable. No is a complete sentence. Practice saying it in the mirror if you need to. Number 3, validate yourself. Here's the hard truth. Narcissists will never give you the validation you deserve. You have to find that within yourself. Therapy, affirmations, or even sticky notes on your mirror, whatever helps you remember your worth. Number 4, lean on your community. Narcissists isolate you. Fight back by reaching out to your support network. Fellow trans women, they've likely been through this too. Share your stories. It's healing. Trust me, it's healed me a lot. And number 5, don't be afraid to walk away. This is the toughest one of them all. Your RSD will scream, what if they hate me? Your RSD will scream, oh my God, I'm worthless. Let it scream. Protect your peace. So what's the takeaway? Narcissism is a monster, and it can take over your relationships if you're not careful. For trans women, especially those of us with ADHD and RSD, the stakes are even higher. But here's the thing. Recognizing the cycle is the first step in breaking it. If you've been tangled in a narcissistic relationship, give yourself grace. Healing isn't linear, but it's worth the work. And if you're still in that relationship, start planning your exit. You deserve love that uplifts you, not love that drains you. That's it for this episode. Until next time, this is Robyn Lynn, ending with a grin and a newfound sense of self-worth. Bye-bye.